would like to cater to people who like more direct instruction. These are the top and bottom pieces of the moon crescent. I'll put Freedom Eagle units on the screen. But top pieces have an outside curve of around 52, 53 centimeters, inside curve of 32, so they're about 20 centimeters shorter on the inside. Same thing goes for the bottom piece, and then they're both between 13 and 16 centimeters across the bottom.
For this shaping of your mask cutout, you can really do whatever shape you like. I really love the widow's peak or heart, and you just really kind of gotta cut it out as best you can, and be sure to add little open tabs because this is exactly where your elastic will go. And then to give these some integrity, we are using Mod Podge. Mod Podge is basically our best friend through this whole process, so layer it on and really make sure you do the inside and the outside around those tabs.
Okay, it has been a couple of hours. These masks are, I think, almost dry enough for me to start adding some paper clay. Now, the paper clay is mostly just to add a little bit of structural integrity to these paper mache masks. And it just makes it kind of nice and firm and a really good base to start building everything else. You know, it's foam and cardboard, but we've got a lot of hot glue and a lot of plaster to come. I need water, and I have some clay tools. So I'm going to get to work on doing these, and then I will let them dry overnight, and then it'll be on to day 2 of this build. I actually wonder if I'm going to be able to do this faster than last time. You'd think. We'll see.
Could maybe try foam clay for this. However, I think paper clay gives a really sturdy, solid base for all of the materials that are to come. It's kind of my preferred clay of choice, but I like it because it's a similar material to the paper mache masks that we are working with. It gives it a second skin almost. You also want to make sure that you have paper clayed around those tabs where the elastic goes really, really, really well, because again, the structural integrity of those tabs is going to be super important. And this is also a really good time to add any extra facial details that you like to your mask. Personally, I love a little protruding chin. It gives the face a little bit more dimensionality and kind of makes it look more like a face and less like a mask. This, I think, is actually one of my favorite bits of this build. I think it really adds to the character. And with any clay, of course, you want to smooth it out. Use whatever you have on hand. Tools aren't really necessary, but just make sure that your surface is as crispy clear as you can possibly make it. There we go, we have chins.
We are back for day 2 of this build. So now that our paper clay is kind of dry, or is dry, I'd say the chins are a little soft, but that's okay. It's time to tend to the cracks. So I'm going to use some of the water from yesterday and some more paper clay, and I might try and make something that's like closer to a slip here, and you can see some of them here, right? So we're just going to work on some of that texture. I'm just making it as secure as possible, and then if there's time before I get sleepy tonight, I will also Mod Podge them, but like that's unlikely. All right.
Look, this didn't really end up looking like a slip, but it did the job. And unfortunately my exposure was a little blown out, but you can see that I just took my time to smooth out any of those cracks and make sure that this was as structurally sound as possible. I did add a little bit of extra clay into any areas that were lumpy or needed a little bit of smoothing. And just take your time with this because you want your mask to be, you know, relatively even. And hey, look at that, I did actually make it to the Mod Podge stage before I hit the sheets. Today, I'm just gonna work on piecing everything together. Then everything is really gonna start taking shape. I've been really tossing up on where I want the kind of axis of the moon to be, and I think that having it coming back a little bit means that I can have the chin going up further this way and less across my chest. And I think it's gonna be a little bit more circular as well. Keep in mind I am making 2 of these. One for me, one for one of you, you know? The next step is the tip of the moon pieces together. Figure out which sides go together best, because often when you cut with a blade, you might end up on an angle. The bottom piece, I need it to sit further out, not only so it lines up with this foam, but also because in the original, I feel like because I was kind of pinching these foam pieces to line up with each other, it ended up quite tight on my face. So in order to kind of combat all of that, I'm taking the top pieces and I'm sticking them down again, but with like a little bit of elevation. That way, my bottom pieces don't have to bend so far in order for them to meet and look reasonable. It has to go on the outside of the elastic so that you can still pull it. Okay. So this was one of those things I did last time without really thinking about what I was doing. So in order to kind of have this back panel filled in, we need cardboard. Super important is to do this on your cardboard with the gradient. We're obviously going to need a head hole, but like that'll come later. I kind of just start sketching it out. As we trace, we just are going to roll it forward, which should give you enough to work with. And then you can realistically just kind of sketch the rest of it out. Now, because we're going to be covering all of this in plaster, like it really doesn't matter if it's perfect. Like really, truly, it is not a big deal. Eventually, we're probably going to need to have like this for the back of the head. Do things safely. Don't do them as I do them. Roll. This should fit. Look at that. For now. Ta-da! And then from here, it is all hot glue, baby. Just heat that glue gun up and go for your life. And look, past me has said it a bunch, but present me at the editing table will say it again. This does not have to be neat. This is all going to get covered. Just measure with your heart and fix it later. And make sure as you are cutting these pieces that you hold onto your scraps. Your scraps are actually going to be the really important pieces of this build. And you can see here that I just kind of took whatever I had in the pile that was building next to me and just kind of figured it out as I went along. I kind of just took bits and pieces and filled in the gaps. You can use cardboard or foam for this part, it really doesn't matter. I believe the first time I did this, I used foam around the front of the face, and this time I decided to use cardboard. And this is one of the important parts of the process. This is where we are joining the top and the bottom ends of our banana shape. Now, I would say use foam for this, and then once you've kind of connected those two sides, you can fill in the gap around the front of the face. From here, you can see that my two ends are not even. The backs of this mask are completely misaligned, and that is because of the angle that I place them at. And truly, again, this does not matter. You can be as messy as you like. Just fill in whatever you need in order to make your moon look nice and even. And you can see I'm even taking these tiny scraps and kind of bending them to the space that I need them to sit in. And from there, you can see that those far edges line up pretty well. And in order to make it even, I just traced what I had done on another piece of foam. Is this the most effective way to do this? I don't know. Maybe one of you can tell me. However, this truly is one of those projects where you just f*** around and find out. And I found out that this method works pretty well for me. From here, I just got a piece of foam, laid it on the outside, and from the inside, traced the shape I would need to fill those gaps. Now, the first time I did this wedge between the two pieces was much larger, and this time I really wanted to make it a little more seamless. And honestly, I think I did pretty well here. This next step is totally optional, but I like to use masking or painter's tape to smooth out the surface of all of those joins that we've just made. This is also a really great time to add any extra detail that you might like with clay. You can see I just added a little bit of dimensionality and more protrusion to the chin. I love these chins. Bit more mud. That's probably too much, but whatever. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to use it. Now, the white paint isn't strictly necessary, but I think it's a nice idea to unify the base of this piece before you start adding your plaster. And be sure to remember to paint the wire for your decorative star while you have your paints out. In the original 2023 version of this build, I actually wrapped the floristry wire around the tip of the moon, but in this version, I decided to glue the wire down first onto the frame so it could then be covered with plaster, so it was a little more seamless. Now, I didn't get recorded footage of this, but the length of your floristry wire should be long enough that you have a little bit of leeway and room to play. And eventually, when you are adding your decorative star, it's probably a good idea to try this one on. Personally, I prefer it to be kind of just above the eyes or the brow. The next step is one of my favorites. It's using plaster gauze. And if you're going to use this stuff, do it right. Wear protective gear because it is dusty as hell. And this is just one of those things where you go in without a plan. I personally like to add ridges and, you know, kind of hills and valleys to the texture of my moon mask. I really like using plaster gauze because you can get that crater-like texture in the surface of the moon. And as that powder builds up in your water supply, you can actually use it to smooth out any areas where you may have gone perhaps a little too hard creating texture.
It has been about 56 hours since I plastered our moon masks. One thing I forgot to say is that when you have finished the plastering step of this, they're going to be heavy. They're going to be completely like sodden and wet and weighed down with water. However, now that some time has passed and that they are dry, it looks pretty good. This one, unfortunately, our little guy, in my sleepy state, missed a spot here and also here up on the tip. So I'm going to redo that now. Once they've been Mod Podged, the last steps is just attaching the little star, which I'm also going to make now, and then just adding a layer of paint and detail. It's possible in doing this and in learning some things about this process by doing it again, I want to make another one because I have no chill. So we're going to get this craft finalized so that we can put on some clown makeup and be the moon, which is kind of like the best part. Okay, let's go.
The next step is, of course, to go in with more Mod Podge. Now, the first time I did this, I watered down my Mod Podge for this last step, and I think I would actually advise that over just straight Mod Podge. It means that you retain a little bit of the, I would say, dryness that the plaster gauze offers, whereas straight Mod Podge kind of gives you almost a base that's too shiny. And of course, don't forget to paint the insides because you don't want any of that plaster dust coming off on your clothes or skin. And then the last step is just creating your decorative star. Now, create whatever shape star you like. I prefer something that's a little bit irregular, and cut out a few layers that are all the same. I would say maybe 3 layers is adequate. I did 4 for this remake, and I prefer the slightly thinner version. But just glue them down, align them as best you can, maybe make a better star shape so as to not confuse yourself like I did. And once you have them layered up, you can use your aluminium coated mylar or even just foil, whatever you have on hand. And then just wrap the edges with a little strip until you've got something that looks kind of like a cookie cutter, I would say. Once you have your cookie cutter shape, make a few little cuts at the points and fold the edges over as best you can before placing a bit of hot glue all over the front and sticking down a sort of front piece. And in order to make this potentially a little more seamless than the first time I did it, I decided to glue the floristry wire on the inside of the back piece of this star. Okay, a little design assessment for this moon mask build because they all truthfully come out kind of different every time. This one here on the left is from 2023 and the one on the right is the 2025 build that I did for this video. There are some big design differences. First off, I actually quite like the floristry wire wrapped around the tip of the mask. This adds a little bit of whimsy and charm. You'll also notice that this one on the left, she's kind of skinny. She's wafer thin compared to the newer build on the right, which, you know, she's got a little bit of heft to her that I also quite enjoy. To me, they both look like different phases of the moon, I guess. Now, I love all my children equally, and you can decide for yourself which shape you prefer. I think for the work that I do, photo work and being able to get lots of different angles, I do prefer the one on the left. And I think I actually preferred the dry brushing that I did on this newer build that highlights a bit more of the dimensionality in the shape. In the original build, what I tried to do was add shadow values to where everything was kind of in a valley or dipping below. One of the details that I absolutely adored in this original build was the use of plaster to create those circular little craters, and in this version I actually wanted them to look like ears. I will say also in the original build that it has these kind of really large side panels. It doesn't look as seamless, and she is a little clunky. It looks okay on camera, but the more you kind of look at the details, the more I would say it needs some work. And that really is what I tried to do in this newer version. You can see the panels don't really stick out or protrude in the same way. It was much more seamless. As we get close up here, detail of the shine in that Mod Podge really does come through, and there is something about the watered down Mod Podge and the texture of the original that I really love. However, over time it will start to shed plaster dust, just an FYI. One of the big differences in this newer 2025 build also, I would say, is how straight it is compared to the previous version. You can see that it's kind of relatively even. The angles are pretty aligned, whereas the original, look, she's got some character. It doesn't really matter because I kind of only ever used it for 3/4 profile portraits, but she's got quirks, and I kind of like that about her. I also think that I prefer the star on the original design. I believe a couple of the things I did differently was that there were less layers of cardboard, and I also did a front panel of mylar before wrapping the star in that cookie cutter design. I will say I got a bit scrappy with this one, mostly because it was predominantly for content. Anyone who was wondering about the larger size mask that I did, this is the third mask that I have made. And you can see that I had to add a couple of extra cardboard layers and pieces to really extend it to feel large enough. One thing I love about this version is the protruding kind of edges of the mask. I think when I inevitably do this again, I will incorporate that part of the design. I just didn't really end up liking this as much because I felt like the top half and the bottom half were really misaligned in terms of their thickness, and it just didn't really look as nice as I liked. But yeah, I mean, it looks good from the side. I think that all of these masks look really great from a particular angle, and it just depends on what you want to use them for. Well, hello, my friend. You made it to the end of the video, and if you are one of those people, I just want to say a huge thank you for the support. This moon mask is truly one of my favorite things I have ever made, and I am so excited to be sharing it with all of you. If you would like to support my practice and what it is I do here, you can now find the print shop that is open at Sophie Chalk Studio, where you can purchase currently discounted reproductions of some of my works. You can find that shop at Sophie Chalk Studio, and if that is outside of the realm of possibility for you right now, please feel free to just rate, review, and subscribe. You can also leave a comment down below and tell me what it is you liked about this video, things you want to see, or if you have any questions about the moon mask build. And be sure to stay tuned because there is more coming. Think video essays, more behind the scenes, maybe even some ASMR. And I think that's it. I'm so glad you're here. I hope you join me for the next one. Bye bye.